Okay, here's our official welcome to everyone to our Getting Started with Horses in Maryland webinar series. We're very excited to present this information to you as part of October's Maryland's Horse Month. And we are excited to be a part of an industry that's being recognized in such a way in our great state. So today's presentation is going to be about how to find a place to ride. One of the first things that you might be looking to get started with if you're thinking about putting horses into your life right now. Thank you to all of you who are listening to us live, those who may be following along on this recording later. My name is Jennifer Reynolds. I am the Equine Extension Coordinator here at the University of Maryland. I'll be assisting as host and helping wrangle questions today. Again, please leave all of your questions in the chat box and we will make sure that our speakers are able to address them by the end of the seminar. I'm very excited to introduce two ladies who are very familiar with how to find a place to ride. First is Anne Litz, who works with the Maryland Horse Industry Board and specifically is tasked with overseeing the stable licensing program that is a part of that. And also Katherine Rizzo, who works with the Equiery as an editor there and has a lot of other riding and training and horse background to share with us as well. I'll let them tell you a little bit more about their credentials and what they do on a day-to-day basis. We're very pleased to have them with us. I'm going to turn things over to them, stop sharing my screen, and let them begin the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jen. I'm Anne Litz. I work for the Maryland Horse Industry Board. I am their field marketing specialist. I also work with licensing stables. And then Katherine, did you want to introduce yourself now? And then
all right, sure thing. So I'm Katherine Rizzo. I'm the editor at the Equiery magazine, but I also teach riding lessons to kids and adults for several years now and ride and train horses also.
Excellent. And that is also, I've ridden since I was little. I grew up in Maryland and I fox hunt, and school horses now is my choice, my riding choice. So working for the Maryland Horse Industry Board, I'll kind of go over what we do as an agency, and please ask any questions as you go along. We're happy to answer, and then I'll talk about how to find the stable for you. So the Maryland Horse Industry Board is under the Maryland Department of Agriculture, and 52 years ago, the Maryland General Assembly passed a law requiring commercial stables to be licensed. Commercial stables have one or more horses that solicit public. So boarding, lessons, rental, rescue, therapeutic sanctuaries all need to be licensed. Anyone that you are going to look for to work with horses, to ride horses, to help with rescues, they all are supposed to be licensed. And the licensing process came out of Maryland's very, very high level of caring about their horses. It's a common theme across the board of all the counties that Maryland cares about their horses. So that is the main goal of licensing these stables. The second goal is to make sure it's safe for you, the participants, to come in. And stables do not look like one certain stable that are licensed. There's not one set of credentials except for the welfare of the horses and of the people that come, the safety of the tack, the safety of the barn, and how good the horses look, the care that they're under. But there are all sorts of stables, which I'll get into a little bit later. The raising the public awareness of the Maryland horse industry is also something that the Maryland Horse Industry Board does. When we were part of Celebrate everything that's going on in Maryland, it's amazing how much we have going on, from the Preakness, which everyone in the world knows about, to, jousting is our state sport, to the amount of fox hunts we have, horse shows we have, Western stables, trail riding. The amount of horses. I've lived in a couple other states, and it's overwhelming how many, in a wonderful way, how many horse activities we have access to at a very high level here. We also work with other organizations like the Equiery and Maryland Horse Council and the University of Maryland to work together and combine our goal of horses in Maryland and getting you guys introduced to them. As we have been licensing stables for 52 years, I've just been with them about 3 years, the Maryland Horse Industry Board. Coming into this pandemic, when we were able to be in touch with all of our licensed stables, and we have about 700 licensed stables in Maryland, that doesn't count any of the private stables or thoroughbred farms. being licensed meant you were in touch with the executive director, Ross Petticord, and we had a lot of outreach during the pandemic when the stables had to shut down and were losing income. We worked on a task force with these stables and got stables open before the stage 1, and hopefully that eased some of the stressful pain, because even in a pandemic, just like humans, these horses needed to eat and be taken care of. So they need to be working and have the stables opened. So we really learned about the importance of our network of licensed stables. So when you are looking for your place to ride, you want to look for a licensed stable. And I'm going to talk to you and show you a screen about where you can look for your stable. But that is one of the first things you want to either look for, and I'll show you what a certificate looks like, your stable license, or you want to just ask them if they are licensed. You do not need to write them off if they are not licensed, but you would want to contact us and find out why they aren't, or have them contact us. Some stables just simply do not know that they need to be licensed. And then once they apply for a license, they're inspected every year by our inspectors, and our inspectors come out. It's a very friendly process. Stables that don't want to be licensed and kind of hide from the state are usually ones that have issues with their horses. So we just want to make sure the horses and the public riding them have the best care possible. So that is the goal of inspections and of licensing stables. So if we want to share, let's see, let me share my screen. We'll be able to. Should be able to share. There we go. All right. So this is the Maryland Horse Industry Board website. I'm going to let it get, there we go. And this is where you can find everyone connected and everyone you need to know. So if you're looking for stable licensing, this is our homepage. You're going to go to stable licensing. You can read all about the different stables and why they're licensed, everything I just talked about. And then if you want to click here, this is a good place to start and look into your county. You can search by county or name or license number. You probably won't have the license number, but by counties. The counties that are closest to you, and it might not be your county. So this is a way you can start. And then when you click on this, let's say you went to 3T Performance, it'll give you the address and they'll tell you the kind of services that they have. Some will list their websites here, some don't. It's completely up to the stables. They decide how to list themselves to the public. If you see a stable here, what I would then suggest is using your search engine and taking this name of a stable over into Google and searching them. They might have a Facebook page comes up that they didn't let us know about, and you're going to look for them there. And you can kind of check out their website. You can start all of this process from your computer and at home with your parents and going through this. You can also do this the reverse way. Go to Google first and look for riding stables in my county, in my city, in my state. As these stables come up and you're looking through them, then you'd want to come back over to this, and we'll send you all of these links. And you'd want to make sure that you put that stable in and it comes up. If it doesn't, or if you have any questions, I'll make sure you guys have my email, and it's provided everywhere on these websites. And you just want to be able to ask and see why they aren't licensed, and we will work with you on that and make sure that they are, so that this is safe for you to start riding. So what you're other going to look for as you think about riding, this webinar is talking about where to learn to ride. However, working with the Maryland Horse Industry Board, I have learned that a lot of people don't necessarily want to ride right away. They just want to get involved with horses. And we have a lot of amazing therapeutic riding or rescues, and some barns just do care and horses in exchange for that. And sometimes the riding is all people know to ask for, when really they just want to be a part of these horses' lives. So don't be intimidated by that. Lots of stables offer the hands-on experience, or maybe you just want to work and help people raise money if you rescue horses, or in those kind of aspects. So there's a much broader place to get involved than to just go and ride. If you are knowing that you want to ride English or Western, or the kind of riding that you want, you will be able to find that out on their website and by contacting these stables about what kind of training that they want to do. If you aren't sure what kind of riding you want to do and what kind of stable you want, a challenge that the horse industry was faced with years ago when we would come into Annapolis is that the riding industry is elitist and hard to get involved with. So we have joined with 38 of our licensed stables. They're called our Horse Discovery Centers, if you go back to our website. And this was launched in 2015, and it's a voluntary process. They have to be licensed, and they have a much more rigorous inspection process. But these are all our licensed stables down here. They excel in the introductory level. Now, some of these will take you all the way on to 5 stars as Full Moon Farm. So you can go all the way. It's not just beginners, but these places are in tune with introducing you to horses in a safe and effective way and helping you find out where you're going to be. These stables, the pandemic has changed a couple of ways they operate. However, they are offering open barns. They're starting to now webinars, and a lot of these open barns are free. You can, if you join our email list, which we'll send out, we send them out when they have them. And if you follow MarylandHorse.com, and on our Maryland Horse Month on Facebook, which will send you all these links, we'll list these open houses. And if you're just sort of figuring out what you want, we suggest you go to them. There's no cost to go and to see these barns when they have these open houses. They might have costs for a pony ride or something like that, but you can get a feel for this stable. So those are your first steps. And so let's say you have a handful of stables that you are interested in. You're going to want to find out where they are, and you're going to contact them and make an appointment to get out there, especially during COVID. That's sort of one of the main changes right now. A lot of places aren't having as many open houses, and the CDC guidelines are applying. We have found an increase in people looking for riding lessons right now because it's outdoors. It feels safe. On a horse, you're absolutely apart. You don't have to worry about it. Some stables do have people wear masks if they are leading the child or something like that, but otherwise, it's a very safe outdoor activity, especially at a licensed stable or a horse discovery center. So that is sort of the overview in a brief way of how to find your stables. And I am always available through email if you have questions about stables. But if your stable has been licensed, we can stand behind that it is safe. If you ever have questions about when you get there and something seems like it's not, then you're welcome to contact me at any time and we can talk about it. When you, and Katherine's going to talk to you about what to bring, but when you get to this stable, what you want to do, and she'll go into this more, you do want to make sure the location of your stable is something that is easy for you to drive to, or your parents to drive to. If you're driving an hour and a half for a stable, it's going to be hard to get there on a Thursday in traffic. Pick something that's close and easy to get to. And when you get there, you want to take in the feel of the stable. Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel safe? Does it seem relatively picked up and cleaned? The horses look happy, round, happy horses and happy people. If you're looking for an adult barn, you might not want all the kids running around, but your kids, I mean, I did grow up riding on my parents' small farm, but my favorite thing was pony camp, or if I ever got to take lessons, because being with other kids in a lesson is amazing, and it's a camaraderie that you really enjoy. So you want to just feel out what that stable feels like to you. If you are an adult looking for a new barn, there are plenty of barns that cater to just adult lessons and you don't have all the kids, and then there's a bunch in between. There's no limitation, and Maryland is a small state, so there's no limitation on what's available to you around there. So I think that is pretty much what I'm going to cover, and I'm going to let Katherine go unless there are questions that we want to ask first. Jen, you can let me know that. I'll get out of my screen.
I don't see any questions yet, but I do remind everyone listening in, if you do have questions, please go ahead and use that chat box and we will make sure that they get addressed. We certainly want to be able to answer any questions anyone might have today, so feel free to ask them there if you have them.
Thank you. Katherine?
All right, so yeah, so once you've kind of figured out a couple different stables that you're interested in, and like Anne said, you know, trying to stay, we definitely recommend staying as close to your home as you can. You know, just maximizes your time at the stable. You do want to think about setting up an appointment to go look. Like Anne said, there's not, with COVID right now, very few places are actually doing open houses. And instead you have to call and make an appointment. There definitely is an uptick in people asking for lessons these days, and some of the farms are still restricting the number of people per hour, you know, that they're giving lessons to. So make sure that you kind of ask those questions before you even show up, you know, for a site visit. So other things to think about, you know, like Anne also mentions, you know, if you're an adult looking to ride with other adults, ask that question. You can just ask that question on the phone, you know, before even going to a location. If you have a kids, you know, the pony club that I run, we actually have mostly like 11-year-olds up through like 16 or 17, but other pony clubs have like 6 and 7-year-olds. So, you know, you want to ask those type of questions too. Like if you have children, what's the age groups, you know, that are at these stables? Do they offer private lessons, you know, one-on-one lessons, or do they offer group only or some mix? Do they offer only riding in the ring, or do they offer trail riding as well? All of these things are, you know, you might not know exactly what you're looking for yet, but asking lots of questions ahead of time will we'll just make your search a lot easier to find that right fit. And then when you do go to a location, we actually printed, and I'll share my screen in a minute too, but we did our annual Learn to Ride in the Equiery. That does not show up, so I'll definitely show the screen in a minute. It's on our website too, but we do a Learn to Ride brochure that we updated this past year. And one of the things we talk about when you actually go places is, you know, you do want to meet the staff, not just the instructors, but also, you know, who cares for the horses? Is the owner on the property? That sort of thing. Most barns, you know, should feel like a community and almost like a second family once you start to ride somewhere for a while. So you want to feel welcome, obviously. You know, looking at the horses, you know, even if you're brand new to the sport and you don't know much about horses, you can pretty much tell, you know, are the horses, do they look healthy? You know, do they have clean tack on? If you're looking at animals that have, you know, tack that has rips in it or mold on it, you know, that's a bad sign. That's, you know, that's not what you're looking for. And, you know, with the licensing and stuff, you know, that's some of the things that the inspectors check to make sure that all equipment is up to par too. And then, like we talked about the other students, you know, who will you be riding with and that sort of thing. And if you are someone who wants like a social aspect as well, a lot of barns, you know, again, with COVID right now, they might not have as many activities, but some barns will have like, they'll do like, I know one barn around my area does like a mom's night. So where the kids are riding, the moms have like a social hour at the same time that the kids are riding. Or you might go somewhere that after a lesson, you know, all the students, you know, they go out to get pizza together, or the farm has, you know, host barbecues and that sort of stuff. If that's something you're interested in, you know, ask those questions as well. And then once you decide on, you know, a stable or two, definitely ask to do like an evaluation lesson or join like a one-time group, you know, just to see if it is the right fit for you. And, you know, don't be afraid to try a couple different barns. You know, you don't have to just try one barn and say yes or no to that specific barn. You can go try a couple and then make a decision, you know, based on a few different places. You know, I would, because of COVID right now, I would definitely ask ahead of time before you arrive what their procedures are, because each barn is a little bit different, but they are supposed to be following specific guidelines. You also need to ask about equipment, and if there is shared equipment. The barn that I mainly teach at used to use, we had helmets so that if someone didn't have their own helmet, you could use one of ours. We don't do that right now because of COVID. So some places have ways to disinfect the helmet, some places don't. So you're gonna wanna ask, you know, what type of gear do I need before I even get to the stable? And we're actually gonna talk about that in a whole different webinar, next week's webinar, so we'll get into that a little bit more. And then once you're at a barn, you know, just try to maximize your time, like take it all in. I always tell students, you know, it's better to be early than late. We're going to start on time, whether you're there or not. So please be there. And, you know, after a lesson, there might be things that, you know, if you want more time at a barn, there might be things that, you know, you can do, like you can help brush the horses out at the end of the day, or help with feeding. And, you know, if you want to be more involved, times we would love someone to help us untack all the horses at the end of the day, or help sweep the aisle and that sort of thing. And it's a way to get more out of the riding experience than just getting on a horse. And I did see some questions off to the side here. Let's see,
Yeah,
as an adult, it can be harder to find. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I
Go
was
ahead,
just going to
Jennifer.
say, yeah, we do have some questions. I'll let you go ahead, and if you want to, I'll read them out loud if you'd like to answer them. We'll kind of take them section by section because there's
Okay.
several here sort of together. As an adult, it can be harder to find stables that are not overrun by children. Do you have any suggestions for adults looking to ride?
Well, I think the main thing is just ask ahead of time, because we do, you know, certain barns might have lessons geared just for children, but they'll have separate lessons geared just for adults. So ask what the population is before you go out. I don't think there's any barns per se, and you might know this better, that are specifically, but you would have to, I mean, I would just call and ask.
Yeah, I agree with Catherine. I do know a lot of barns that even if they do, and I've seen your questions, there's a lot of kids, even if they do have children, they do adult riding night. There was a women in wine one where they would all these moms would have a riding lesson together and then have a glass of wine afterwards. So they do, there are definitely adult stables. I just worked with the lady yesterday trying to find a dressage place, and I gave her a list of them. And yes, there are children at a lot of these, but some of these more private farms are just geared to kind of the one-on-one with adults. So it's definitely out there. If they're advertising as a horse discovery center and for 4-H and all those things, that probably does predict that you would have mostly children. But as you're looking for a change, which it looks like you are, those are the kind of questions that you would want to ask. And Catherine, I'll answer the COVID protocol ones after that if you want to talk a little bit more about questions to ask when looking for stables or trainers, which I think we've both kind of covered. But if you want to touch on that, then I'll move to
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would say is, I do think the site visits are super important. So if you're looking for a new farm right now, you can start with a search, just a search on the Horse Industry Board's page, or the Equiery has a stable listing as well. Find a couple barns in your area and just ask those questions. Are there adult lessons? Is it primarily children? That sort of thing. And then just go and feel what it's like.
And depending on what adult lessons, are you wanting to just ride? Are you looking to go to shows? Are you looking to you get to ask anything you want. And if you hit a stable that doesn't answer your question in a very open and educational way, that's when you contact us. And maybe some of these stables are geared to advanced people and are showing at a high level and are not going to teach beginners. That's great. We need everybody. But there are plenty of stables out there that'll answer all your questions, and you might not know what you want to end up doing. So those kind of introductory questions, they should be open and working with you to those. The COVID protocols right now, right now, all our stables are supposed to be following CDC guidelines of wearing masks when social distancing isn't possible. You're not required to wear them when you're riding, but if you are in close proximity to people, they do ask. Most barns are, what would you say, Catherine, 90% outside, and it's even more of it now. So you are outside, and that's and it's not a contact sport, except contact with your horse. So there is a safety aspect already in place. There's an expression, keeping a horse length apart. That's literally a horse length, and that is much more than 6 feet. So it's a good sport to have. You absolutely ask if tack is being sanitized and COVID. It's really a personal choice for you that you want to feel safe. And if someone's questioning that you're being overly cautious, that's probably not the farm for you. Or some farms might be having a very, very strict policy with COVID. That's just like anywhere else. You don't know who lives in the farm. You don't know the age of the person that owns the farm, health conditions that they may have. Each stable is allowed to, just like counties, decide what level of COVID restrictions that they want to have. Some are having group lessons now. That's absolutely COVID friendly, but some people still want independent lessons, and not a lot of people at the barn. We haven't had any complaints, problems with stables. You cannot have spectators at horse shows and riding events unless there's an announcement right now, and that has changed. But eventually you will be able to go to those horse shows and all those again. And that's another way you could kind of check out a barn if they have horse shows, because those were open to the public, and they will be again soon. So those are the COVID questions. You can ask, whatever you want, and pick a place that you feel comfortable, especially always, but especially now with the sanitation. And bring your, if you want to wear your mask, wear your mask. Like I said, I go out with hounds and fox hunt. We are separated by horses in lots of open space, but there's a good amount of people that potentially work in hospitals and things like that do come out and wear masks the whole time we're on horses. And we've canceled all the social events for that. So that's kind of a personal experience. I've seen diversity of that just within my own communities. I'm sure Katherine has too. So ask whatever you want and bring your hand sanitizer and your masks, and if it feels uncomfortable, it's not the farm.
I was going to say, we definitely encourage all of our families to are in their vehicles. So pretty much as soon as they get back in their cars, they can clean their hands and that sort of stuff. The Horse Council also put out kind of like recommendations for how to clean tack and that sort of stuff. It really is Everybody's kind of doing a little bit different things, I'm finding. But I do feel in general, the horse community in terms of trainers and lesson stables are taking it very seriously, and we want to protect our students and our families. One thing I would ask, in addition to kind of tack that's related to COVID, is if you are a parent assigning your children up for lessons, I would ask if you are actually allowed to watch the lessons or not, because with the numbers, trying to restrict the numbers around the rings and stuff, you know, they might ask you to remain in your vehicle instead of coming, you know, to the ringside. Or if you do come ringside to watch, you know, they might say, you know, I would hope they are, but it's kind of preference thing, but having mask on, that sort of thing, as well. So it is something definitely to keep in mind. And like I said, I do feel like most of us trainers and lesson stables are taking it incredibly seriously, because we want to stay open and we want to keep serving everybody. So we're going to do what we can.
Yeah, equestrians tend to be disciplined. It is a discipline. And, you know, there are infectious diseases that horses, you know, prior COVID, horses can be spread horse to horse, barn to barn. So there is a certain level of, even though you're going to get good and dirty, because that's what you get to get the good kind of dirt in the barn, but there is a sanitation that takes place in, like Katherine's saying, it's different places, but tack should be clean, people should be separate, you should be outside, and it should feel good when you're there. You shouldn't feel anxious when you're at the barn.
We have other questions popping up, or?
Looks like that's most of them for now.
Anyone else has another question, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat. We do want to make sure that we get any questions you might have answered while we have these good folks here to answer them for you.
And when you get home and digest everything and talk to other people, we are available. Email is the best way, just since we're not in office anymore. Email is the best way for us to send it out. We're not necessarily going to recommend certain stables over other ones unless we know this, mostly adults, because really all our stables, if they've been licensed, have a very important part to play in Maryland. But we're happy to talk through if there are other questions that you have, or as you open up. Katherine, you want to take it? This says, can you talk about the cost of lessons, group versus private, evaluation lessons?
Yes. So evaluation lessons, you know, I would definitely ask ahead of time if there is a fee involved with those. I know some barns used to do, like, every Saturday at 1 o'clock was an evaluation, and it was like a free, you know, you just came, you showed up, you got a kind of a mini lesson to figure out where you would fit into that program. I don't know, you know, who's doing that and who's not with COVID right now. The barn that I work at, we do one-on-one evaluations now. And we do it as a private lesson. So it's like a 30-minute private lesson. But it ends up being a lot longer than that, since we all chat, you know, for a while to answer tons of questions. And I think the cost, you know, it can range significantly for different farms. You know, that charge $100 for an hour, you know, and for a private lesson, and other trainers that charge $50 for a private lesson. Groups, you know, I've seen ranges from $35 an hour for a group to $65 or $70 an hour per group. I do know a lot of stables tend to give discounts if you pay for like a big block or a chunk of time, versus individual lessons. So they'll take, like, I don't know, $5 off or something like that if you pay for 10 lessons instead of one at a time. But, you know, you ask the question ahead of time, and a lot of stables have their rates on their websites as well. So you should be able to find that info.
And then there'll be other costs as you join your lesson. And I mean, there's places that will lease horses. They'll have horses for sale. There'll be partial leases. There are certain levels as you slowly finding your horse, which people will talk about later. But yeah, the baseline of asking what private lessons versus group lessons would be a good baseline to kind of figure out if that would work for you.
And something else about, you know, privates versus groups, you know, not from a cost standpoint, but, you know, some people ask me, is it better to take a private or better to take a group? And I really think it's how you or your child learn. For a lot of my younger kids that I teach, I tell them it's better to have a group because they learn from both doing it and watching each other do it, like watching each other do things. So I do think there is, plus there's a little bit of that social aspect to a group lesson. I find that a lot of my students, when they start to get to the point where they are competing regularly and that sort of thing, they'll tend to switch to privates because they really want to focus on themselves and their horse. But there's nothing wrong with doing privates at any level. You can always sign up for groups and then supplement with privates every now and then. It's really your personal preference and what you feel, you or your child need.
Great suggestion. I know I used to do 2 group and then 1 private. And also, if you want to sound, lots of trail riding stables in Maryland too, not as many as there are out west, but we do have trail riding stables, some really excellent ones. And if lessons aren't what you're necessarily into, but you just want to sit on a horse, you're going to look up a trail riding stable. And some lesson stables offer trail rides, but that's where they really are going to put beginners on a horse and guide you on a trail, which is wonderful. And that might be the way you kind of get introduced, and that might be what you're interested in. And then, lessons from there, or lessons first and then a trail ride. So there's no wrong way to go about seeing what works for you.
And for the number of students in group lessons, on average, most places I see tend to do no more than 6 per group. I know our stable, due to COVID, has dropped that down to no more than 4 per group. So they're much smaller because we're trying to just keep the overall numbers on the farm lower per hour. So, but most of the time I kind of feel like most barns, it's, between 4 and 6 per group. Some places will also offer semi-private lessons, which would just be like 2 people in a group. For if you have a friend you want to ride with, or I actually have a mother and daughter that like to ride together, so they do just the 2 of them. So you can kind of feel that out. And do you want to answer that one, Anne? English
Sure.
or Western?
There's a question about if you should pick a stable that rides Western or English. That is actually a tricky one for me, so Katherine can jump in too. I'd say there's no preference. Yeah. There are a lot more English stables than Western in Maryland. As you go out west, there are more stables. If you're interested in showing over fences, and depending on where you want to go, that would be English. Western, you can do like dressage Western. There's a Western dressage, but there is that aspect. But to be honest, the basics on it, the riding, the skills, your hands, your legs, the balance of the horse are the same. So start, if you like the barn and they teach Western, but eventually you're going to be going to horse shows and want to be jumping fences, it's not wrong to start there. You're going to learn, with good instruction, you're going to learn the basics. So if it feels better to start in a Western saddle, that's awesome. You're learning the horse, you're learning your balance, and then go from there. But if you want to do barrel racing, if you start at an English place, you're gonna buy a Western saddle and you're gonna race on the standard. So
personally, I started at an English barn that was primarily eventing, but then somewhere along the line, I ended up with some Western riding with some Western people, and then the Western riding actually helped my dressage in a way because they were very complementary, and so you could even flip-flop a little bit between them, but I don't think one is better than the other in terms of starting. I think it's just what you feel more comfortable in. A Western saddle is going to be, it's a larger saddle, and a lot of people find it more comfortable to sit in. An English saddle is going to be closer to the horse and much smaller. So that might make up your mind, just give it a try and see which you like better.
That's a good question. We have another one from someone who's just moved here for her daughter. There is a lot of times ages. I would say, Katherine, I think 5 is usually a pretty good time. Now, some places will let you do pony rides or pony parties, but usually about 4 or 5 usually. In some places 6. There's not a rule of when someone can start riding. It just usually depends on the instructors for how old they are. So this is, I'm going to send a link. A great way to get started for your daughter as she's learning, we have these horse discovery centers, and you're in Baltimore, so there's plenty around you. Before, I'm going to repeat for just a second, is before they did have more open barns than they do now. but these horse discovery centers are going to get you involved with the horses. And I love your question about wanting to be involved with the horses at the barn and simply not take lessons. There are barns that you can pay to show up and be handed a ready horse and hand them off when you go. Nothing wrong with that. That actually sounds really nice if that ever had that happen. Actually, I love the getting them ready process, but a lot of barns, they are going to, and make sure that's a awesome question to ask. Some of the, with little kids, a lot of times they're going to start on the ground, you know, grooming and learning to pick up their feet and just learning how pressure works with the horse and how leading them. I mean, it's all an important part of the education. So I'm going to suggest starting with the horse discovery centers, and you're welcome to reach out to me and I'll send you a link about them.
Yeah.
I see.
Well, sorry. Just to add to that, you know, I do think, you know, on a national level, and Maryland has so many of these, both U.S. Pony Club and 4-H programs are also good ways to do more than just ride. Not saying they're the only ways to do it, but they're, you know, nationally recognized organizations that really focus on horsemanship and not just the riding aspect of it. So that is something to, you know, maybe look into. And at 10, you know, I mean, definitely she's old enough to do either of those programs. And some barns, you know, do have Pony Club or 4-H programs, but you can also get, I don't know, Jennifer, if you can put up a link at some point for the Maryland 4-H programs, but they're all over the state.
And a lot of barns have them. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I can do that. And I would say too that for some of you, if you have specific questions about barns in your area that would suit your needs, I put Anne's, we can put Anne and Katherine's emails, but Anne would be the one to maybe send a specific email to, again, with maybe some more details so that we don't get any details lost in the chat here, some specifics about what you might be looking for, and she can direct you as she knows. There's so many barns in the state of Maryland. We're really lucky to have such a variety. So sometimes there's a little trial and error you have to do yourself to see what fits you. You know, because there's not every barn is for everybody, but there's a barn for everybody. So making sure that there's one that's suitable to you. But I know Baltimore area folks are fortunate that Anne is very familiar with that area. So she might be able to really help direct you specifically to something or a particular style of riding that you're interested in.
And if it's a barn that I don't know, it doesn't mean that they're not the best ever. There's just a lot of barns out there, which it's awesome how many barns there are, but I'm happy to kind of work through. Another thing we talked about at the beginning with her being 10, yes, I love the suggestion 4-H and Pony Club and Pony Camp. Some of these rescue places and sanctuaries take volunteers and they have kids. And if you could be working with the horses and learning a lot of potentially medical care and feeding, and you know, that might be. And I could, one of our horse discovery center, Days End and Big Purple Barn, like they have kids doing help and care. They are not riding stables. So however, that would be, I'm not adding another stable, but there is levels of the rescues that really are going to educate you on horse care. If you look for that outside of it too, might be another source of education.
Just one more thing about that though. Again, I keep going back to because of COVID. I would, you know, don't get frustrated if you do go to a farm and want, you know, and you want more of that experience outside of lessons, if they're saying that they're very much limiting that right now. Like I know my club is not, you know, we are allowing kids to help with certain things. Like, you know, our pony club, they used to come early, they would help feed the horses, they would get the horses groomed, tacked up and all that kind of stuff. But we, you know, we can't have that many people in the barn at the same time. So we're kind of doing like assigned times, and like, you know, these 3 people get this time period and these 3 people get that time period and that sort of thing. So it's probably not as open and as it normally is. But you know, as soon as we get through this, right. You know, if I have 10 kids in the barn at once helping, fabulous. I would love that.
That's a really good point.
I know.
Things will change a little bit.
We'll get there.
Open up. We'll get there. If there are any other questions, we're happy to answer now. And I know Jennifer has everyone's emails, so you can send out our emails, and we will help you find a barn. And a lot of the research you do on your own. Trust your gut. You know what feels right. If it's, you shouldn't feel nervous or scared. You do want to be pushed by your instructor, and there are, as the things, grow, and there's a growth aspect, but you shouldn't ever feel uncomfortable at a barn about your safety or the safety of your kids. So, there's plenty out there. You'll find the right barn for yourself.
Yes, I'd be happy to take a list of our participants, and we'll make sure that we send your contact information and some of these additional links that we've shared in the chat. I can share in that as well. So hopefully that will help some of these folks that have been able to be on today. But we do have a few more minutes. If anyone has any additional questions that they'd like to ask, I'll give you a minute to type just in case. We don't want to leave anyone out.
And I would suggest also, if you are moms with children or with your friends, get a group together, like talk to the moms about you guys going together. And it will be small right now during COVID, but talking to the groups and trying to find a barn together, your kids will really enjoy that. It's good for them. They're being outside. It's a good community, but there's also the safety of separation, especially during COVID. So it's, if there's anything we can do to help you get out there, it's why we get up every day with to get to see them or to get to talk to people about horses. The only thing I like more than people is horses. So if I get to talk about both, I'm very happy to do so. And Maryland is an amazing place to do that.
I don't see any additional questions coming in, so it looks like we've covered most of what we've had asked so far today. So again, we will send out some information to those of you that have registered for this. The links are in the chat as well, but I'll make sure that you get them. When we post this recording, we'll post that in the description section of this video as well. So thank you all for participating. Thank you so much to Anne and to Katherine for sharing your knowledge and information today. I guess that will conclude our session. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us. Remind you that we do have webinars scheduled for each Wednesday at 4 o'clock this month. So please check out marylandhorse.com for all of the October Horse Month activities. There are lots and lots of things going on, a lot of virtual opportunities. If there's things that you'd like to watch or share with your family, some other educational opportunities coming up that other organizations are offering. And we would look forward to seeing as many of you as possible again next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, where we'll be talking a little bit more about what kinds of clothing, equipment, supplies, and things you might need to have if you're going to get started in this whole horse riding thing. So thank you so much again to Anne and to Katherine. Thank you to everyone for helping participate. And we will very much look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, everybody.